All right, get ready since this is an explosive one. It all started a few years ago. Let me tell you the account of how my sister chose to wed my cheating ex, and how my parents essentially threatened to disown me if I failed to show up for their distorted little fairy tale. At 28, I felt my life was under control. I was involved with this man, let us name him Ethan. He was 30, successful, and we had 5 years of dating underlined by, though it was cozy and familiar, it was hardly a passionate, fireworks everyday kind of love. We had exactly this future mapped out for us. We had been engaged for 2 years and were preparing a modest summer marriage. The house, the dog, the entire 9 yards. Nothing extravagant, simply something decent for our closest friends and relatives. I was buried in wedding planning, venue research, dress concept pinning, the entire shebang. Ethan wasn't really involved, but I reasoned that's simply how men are. He would basically advise me on what to wear and where to stand. Looking back, perhaps that should have been a red flag, but the whole "we're getting married" thing blinded me. Then, 3 months before the wedding, my world collapsed. One of the girls we both knew sent a DM. Though not close, I trusted her. Attached were screenshots of Ethan chatting with another woman. Her message was brief and direct. "Hey, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but I think you need to know." And it was more than just light-hearted conversation. It was passionate. I recall looking at my phone, totally paralyzed. Though the screenshots didn't lie, I kept wondering, this has to be a mistake. Ethan emotionally cheated, not only flirted, and it wasn't a one-time occurrence. Months of this had been ongoing, months of preparation for our wedding while he was prowling about with someone else. I avoided confronting him straight away. I needed time to think it through. Was my output insufficient? Have I overlooked some obvious signs? Was I just plain boring? I couldn't stand it anymore the next day. Showing Ethan the screenshots, I insisted on an explanation. He first disputed it, claiming it was just harmless fun, and that it didn't mean anything. When I questioned him, he eventually acknowledged it. "It's not what you think. We didn't do anything," he remarked. Oh, since emotional cheating is far more preferable, I become enraged. I advised him to pack and head off. Saying he would do anything to right it, he asked me to pardon him. Still, there was nothing to correct. How can you get back from that? After someone has totally broken your heart, how do you find someone trustworthy once more? Calling off the wedding seemed hardly embarrassing. I had to get everyone in touch and clarify that it wasn't happening. It was intolerable, the pitying eyes, the uncomfortable chats. At least, though, I felt I could move on. Ethan left town soon after, and I assumed that marked the end of it. Little did I know, the true treachery still lay ahead. And it wasn't from Ethan. 1 year after the split, I was at last beginning to feel like me once more. Healing was a roller coaster of wonderful days and soul-crushing ones. It was not easy. Still, I was keeping it together. My best friend Jake helped me in no small measure. He was always there to get me out of my what-ifs and self-blame spirals. So when Chloe, my younger sister, who was 25 at the time, contacted me one afternoon, I gave it little thought. She sounded much too happy, as though she had just won the lottery. "Big news! Dinner at Mom and Dad's tonight! You're going to love it!" I imagined Chloe had gotten a promotion or something, even though I wasn't really close to her. "Fine," I said. "One family dinner won't kill me." When I got to my parents' place, everything seemed off. My mother greeted me with a very phony, too energetic smile. From the couch, my dad simply waved, half ignoring me as he drank. Classic dad, but Chloe was the one truly triggering alarms. She was virtually buzzing with delight, her smile so broad it was eerie. Chloe merely laughed and passed by me. "You'll see," she said, her voice dripping with syrupy sweetness. We sat down for dinner, and at first it was the usual drill. Chloe seemed in a great mood. Chloe continued staring at me with these knowing looks as my dad grunted in agreement every now and then, and my mom rambled on about her garden. I tried to ignore it, but then she jumped up and tapped her glass with a fork. "I have an announcement!" she shouted, her voice shaking with excitement. Here we go, I thought, readying myself for something crazy. Then she delivered the bomb. "I'm engaged!" The table burst in congrats, and I feigned a smile. clapping along. "Wow, that's fantastic! Who's the lucky guy?" Chloe asked, her eyes darting toward mine like a hawk, zeroing in on its target. "Ethan," she continued, her voice almost dripping with pride. The room's air thickened. Sure, I'd misheard her. I blinked. "Ethan?" I asked, the name tasting like poison on my tongue. "Yes, Ethan. We have been seeing each other for some time now," he suggested last week. My chest clenched as her words set in. Now my sister's fiancé was my ex-fiancé, the man I had spent the last year trying to forget cheating on me. The chamber turned. My folks just watched me with these forced grins. They were knowledgeable. They understood how much this would damage, and Chloe's smile wavered for a single second, but then corrected itself rapidly. "We got close after, you two broke up." "It just happened," I murmured, my voice cracking. "Like accidentally spilling coffee or missing a turn on the highway? You're kidding, right? You're telling me you've been sneaking around with my ex, and now you expect me to— What? Celebrate this?" My mom said, "Calm down, sweetheart. We knew it would be hard for you to hear. You knew about this, and you didn't think to warn me. You just sprang it on me over mashed potatoes." My vision blurred with tears as I got up, my chair rubbing against the floor. With a cracking voice, "You're disgusting," I said. "All of you." "Now wait a minute," my dad said, but I was already snatching my suitcase and heading for the door. Driven home in a flurry of tears and uncertainty, I slammed it behind me, the sound reverberating in the night air. When I arrived at my flat, I fell on the couch and phoned Jake. He picked up the second ring, tried to explain, but the words came out in choking gasps. "Chloe, engaged. Ethan." "Wait," Jake replied, his voice harsh. "You're Ethan? The Ethan? She's marrying him, Jake, and my parents just sat there like it was totally normal." "What the actual—" Jake asked. I let out a sad laugh, wiping my cheeks. "You don't owe them anything," Jake stated sternly. "They think I'm supposed to be okay with this. Like I'm supposed to smile and clap and go to their effing wedding. If they think you're going to roll over for this, they don't know you." He said correctly. Not known to them was myself, but they were just about to learn. That terrible dinner left my life like a Category 5 hurricane striking right now. Texts, calls, voicemails, you name it. My phone would not stop vibrating. My parents weren't much better. Chloe continued to write these long, ragged letters about how she never meant to hurt me and how her connection with Ethan was unexpected but real. I ignored them for a while, but then my dad called. They tried guilt-trip me, saying I was being selfish and immature for not supporting Chloe's happiness. They continued spitting lines like, "Love is complicated," and "You can't control who you fall in love with." It was sickening. That's when it struck me. "If you don't come to the wedding," he added, his voice icy and sharp, "I'll have to rethink helping with your grad school." They were trying to control me, not only stranding me. My dream was graduation from grad school. I had busted my hump to reach where I was, and now they were leveraging it to make me embrace this betrayal. That evening I went to Jake's and felt imprisoned, choked. He glanced at my face once and understood something was different. He remarked, offering me a drink, "They're not letting it go, are they?" I told him everything, the guilt trips, the countless books, my dad's ultimatum. Quietly shaking his head, Jake listened. I stared at him, lost as I finished, and he leaned back and said, "They're pushing you because they think you'll cave. They think you'll put up with their crap because you always have. But you don't have to. You don't have to play by their rules. What am I supposed to do? If I don't go, they'll cut me off. If I do go, I'm letting them win," he added, his eyes glittering. "Go to the wedding, sure, but don't go quietly. If they want you there so badly, make them regret it." Originally, I assumed he was kidding, but more I considered it. More and more it made sense. They wanted me to seem as though everything was okay, to sit there and grin as they commemorated their twisted love tale. But I wasn't going to do that. A scheme began to develop over the next few days. It wasn't only about destroying the wedding, though, albeit, let's be honest, that was most certainly a factor. It has to do with recovering my agency. From me, they had taken so much: my confidence, my value, my mental tranquility. First, I read over all of my previous emails and communications to demonstrate them I wasn't someone they could simply stroll all over. I found everything. Books between Ethan and me during our engagement, screenshots of his adultery, even pictures from the wedding planning I had been so enthralled about. I gathered it all into a folder. Though I knew it was vital, looking at it hurt. Jake helped me finalize my idea. "They think this is their big day," he remarked with a chuckle, "but it's about to be your stage." I was ready by the time the wedding came around, not just enraged. The day itself seemed strange, like entering a dream I couldn't wake from. The sight was breathtaking, almost like something from a magazine. For me, though, it was a battleground. I arrived with Jake at side. He had insisted on attending, and thank you God he did. "You have this," he said as we moved across the assembly. I nodded, but my heart was racing. "Don't let them see you sweat." I was not here to rejoice. Here I was to recover what they had taken from me. The ceremony was agonizing. My stomach started to turn over seeing Chloe walk down the aisle, shining in her white dress. She seemed brilliant, certain, but all I could see was the treachery. And Ethan wore a haughty smile, as though he had earned some sort of award. The worst thing was my parents. I could never have imagined loving him. Sitting in the front row, they radiated like happy parents watching a school performance. It took everything in me not to storm out right then and then. I caught my mom's eye at one point, and she offered me a small smile as if to say, "See, everything worked out." But I did not. I stayed in. I waited. The celebration started as the ceremony finished, and then things began to get interesting. Being the maid of honor, I was supposed to speak. Yes, they had the nerve to ask me. Of course I would have agreed. How might I not? But they had no idea what was ahead. The room hummed with conversation and laughing as I approached the microphone. Every eye in the room was directed upon me. Chloe was grinning. Ethan seemed apathetic. My parents were waiting impatiently. I forced a grin and cleared my throat and began with the customary polite fluff. "Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chloe's older sister. I'm so happy to be here today to celebrate this unique love story." There was some polite laughing from the crowd, but I could see Chloe's smile fail somewhat. Good. I inhaled deeply and carried on, saying, "You know, weddings are about honesty and commitment. They're about building a foundation of trust and love." I stopped to let the words sink in. The crowd fell silent and I think it's important that everyone here knows the truth about the foundation of this particular relationship. Still silence dead. Everybody stared at me. Ethan's arrogant look disappeared as Chloe's face became white like a sheet. I wasn't done. My folks looked as though they had just been slapped. They were seeing each other while Ethan and I were still together, and my parents knew. They kept it from me because they thought it would hurt my feelings. Well, guess what? It did. I dug into my backpack and grabbed the folder I had ready. I passed the folder to an adjacent table knowing it would go like wildfire. For anyone who's curious, I have the proof right here. Screenshots, texts, even photos. Feel free to look at it. I wish you all the best. You deserve each other. I placed the microphone down, got my suitcase, and walked out. Then I turned back to Chloe and Ethan, my voice dripping with ice. Outside, Jake was waiting for me, his face covered in a broad smile. "Holy crap," he remarked. "That was epic." I let out a quivering breath with stilling hands. "Do you think it was too much?" He laughed. "Too much? That was perfect. They wanted you there. Well, you gave them a show." As we headed to the car, I could hear the anarchy breaking out behind us. Visitors were yelling, leaving, and I swore I heard Chloe weeping. Still, I didn't give a damn. I felt as though I could breathe once more, first in more than a year. For the first time in years, I was not trying to make everyone happy, or swallowing my suffering to keep the peace. Walking out of that wedding was the most freeing moment of my life. I knew it wasn't finished, even though I left behind the ruins of their ideal day. Indeed, my phone was glowing like a Christmas tree by the time Jake and I were halfway home. Even some distant relatives were calling and texting nonstop. My parents, Chloe. I nodded. Jake turned to look at me and added, You don't owe them an explanation. Let them stew. I ignored them all. Though another part of me wanted to ignore they existed, part of me wanted to read the messages, see what they were saying. The messages were exactly what I expected when I eventually checked later that evening, equal parts guilt-tripping and wrath. Ethan, however, remained mute. Chloe's first text reading, "How could you do this to me? You ruined my wedding," followed by, "I'll never forgive you for embarrassing me like that." He knew, I suppose, better than to reach out. My mother left an angry message full of letdown. "You crossed the line. This is family and you embarrassed us all. Don't bother calling until you're ready to apologize." My dad was more direct, texting, "You've destroyed this family. Don't expect our support moving forward." I cried that night, not because I regretted what I did, but because I realized how little they cared about me. My parents, sister, and even Ethan had all betrayed me, and now they were behaving as though I was the cause. Update 1. Hey guys, it's been a few months since the wedding, and honestly, I wanted to thank all of you for the support and advice. Jake was right. I don't feel guilty, and I'm not going to apologize. After the wedding, what happened? Reading your comments gave me the will to stick to my position when it felt like my whole family was against me. Let us say, therefore, the aftermath is just what you would have expected. Chloe in full victim mode, telling everyone I had spoiled her big day. She even shared on social media this long, dramatic narrative on how her jealous sister couldn't let her be happy. The truth is, though, she purposefully omitted the portion in which she stole my fiancé and misled me for months. A number of her friends who were at the wedding personally contacted me to apologize. They claimed they were disgusted by her behavior and had no idea about the circumstances. While some of them have even severed relations with her, Ethan has been shockingly quiet. Though I haven't personally heard from him, word of mouth tells me his life has suffered. The wedding drama traveled fast and damaged his professional standing. He works in real estate, and allegedly several of his clients left him upon learning about the crisis. Karma acts quickly, right? And the marriage of Chloe and Ethan, let's call the fissures already showing visible. Those family members who still contact me have informed me they quarrel often. I suppose the reality of what they did and the fallout is starting to hit in. Since their whole relationship is based on lies and treachery, honestly, I can't see how they will manage it. Part of me wants to feel horrible for Chloe, but I can't. She decided on things. Regarding my parents, they are upset with me. They obviously hold me responsible for the family disintegrating. To repair the damage, my mother even wanted to set up a family conference. I turned her down. I told her I threw myself under the bus and I didn't want to mend relationships with individuals who backed Chloe and Ethan. She objected and labeled me immature and selfish. Typical. I have dramatically cut my communication with my parents and have not spoken with Chloe or Ethan. Though it's difficult, honestly it feels liberating. I spent so much of my life trying to make parents happy, trying to be the good daughter, and they returned the favor by supporting the folks who most offended me. Jake has been my rock through all of this. I'm done acting their doormat. He keeps telling me that I am deserving of better and aids with my own goal-oriented focus. Since my parents are no longer helping me financially, I started a new part-time job to save for grad school. Like it's difficult, I'm working it out. For the first time, I feel like I'm creating a life on my own terms, free from outside constraints. Oh, and graduate school. This is occurring. Looking back, do I regret what I did at the wedding? I've been looking for scholarships and investigating other funding sources, and things seem positive. Not even faintly. They wanted me to pretend everything was good and sit there celebrating their lies. I objected, though. I stood up for myself once, and I never will apologize for that. If people believe me to be the villain, good. Allow me to be the adversary in their narrative. Sure, that's where I am now. At least I'm not the fool anymore. 2 wild few months have passed. Again, I appreciate all of your support. I will always be appreciative of you people for helping me to find the will to recover my tail. Hey everyone, it's update time. You won't believe what happened last. I told you Chloe's and my family were in full meltdown following the wedding. Well, guess whose turmoil continued after that? Think twice if you assumed Ethan's mess stopped after I do. After the wedding, I didn't hear from Ethan personally, as this man's story just gets crazier. Not books, not calls, not anything. Though initially I thought, maybe he's finally grown a conscience and is staying in his lane. Apparently, that wasn't the case. Turns out he's been busy doing what he does best, messing things up. About 2 months after the wedding, I received a note from a mutual friend. She remarked, "You're not going to believe this, but Ethan's already back to his old tricks." I had no need to probe her meaning. Ethan supposedly has started messaging other ladies once more. Not only casual flirtation, but also full-fledged late-night improper chats. The best thing about it is a few of these ladies were wed. Classic Ethan. Though from what I've heard, Chloe had no idea at first when I asked, "Does Chloe know?" Things started to fall apart even more when I heard via the family grapevine that Chloe and Ethan had been fighting constantly. She is still trying to play the doting wife, posting cringy Instagram photos with captions like, "Married to my soulmate." Ethan's actions at work had apparently also drawn criticism. Recall my mentioning of his being a real estate agent? Word of the wedding drama spread, though. According to what I've heard, his manager had to have a stern conversation with him on professionalism. Anyone know Karma? Here is where it gets even better, though. Among the ladies Ethan was messaging, she operates in the same sector as him. She did not only block him when she discovered he was married. She sent some mutual colleagues the screenshots. People in his professional network are beginning to notice flaws in his charming guy image now. Honestly, I don't feel bad for him. He made his bed. Today he is lying in it. I can't lie, though. Knowing all this made me feel strangely satisfied. Not because I want Chloe to be hurt, okay, maybe a little, but more because it supports what I have always known. Ethan hasn't changed and never will. He is the same sloppish liar and cheater he has always been, and today it's catching up to him. I haven't contacted Chloe regarding any of this yet. Part of me feels like I should. Maybe she is deserving of knowledge. Another side of me, nevertheless, believes she is currently facing this. She made decisions and chose to start a life with him knowing his treatment of me. She dismissed the warning signs, and today she finds herself living in the storm she welcomed. Should I be sorry for her? To be honest, not really. If one thing I have discovered from all of this is that individuals like Ethan do not decide to be decent one day. They simply keep on toward their next goal. Chloe believed she was the exception, but as it turns out, she is merely another chapter in his narrative of devastation. About me? Every day I am getting better. Moving on is simpler when one knows Ethan is displaying his actual colors to everyone. Today, he is not my concern. If anything, I am glad I avoided a lifetime of this absurdity. Chloe and Ethan deserve each other. Let them handle the aftermath. Thanks once more for all the help, Reddit. You have really enabled me to see things more clearly. Honestly, it is consoling to know I am not alone in this. I'll let you know whether anything else occurs with Ethan. And let me say it most likely will. I will keep concentrating on myself and my future till then, since I deserve more than the wreckage I left behind. Life has this strange way of surprising you when you least expect it. Another bombshell dropped in my lap, just when I thought the dust had settled following the whole wedding crisis and Ethan's ongoing plunge into the depths of scumbaggery. This time, it had nothing to do with Ethan's cheating or my family's treachery. Remember Jake? This one was about him, my confidant, my rock, the one who was at my side through it all. Actually, he had been hiding something of his own. All began with a simple chat. Like old times, we were hanging around his house discussing life, the cosmos, and all in between. The subject of relationships somehow surfaced, and Jake looked strangely far off. "What's up?" I gently pushed him. "You seem off." He stammered for a bit, then sighed. With his voice almost above a whisper, he whispered, "There's something I need to tell you." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" he asked, inhaling deeply, and said, I'm seeing someone." My first response was sheer delight. "Jake, that's fantastic. I'm so happy for you. Who is she?" But his attitude didn't match my excitement. He gazed guiltily. It's complicated," he said, murmuring. "Complicated how?" I said. He stared at me. Eyes glistened with a mix of grief and anxiety. "It's Chloe." The earth slanted on its axis. Chloe, sister, please. The one who snatched my fiancé? The one who helped plan my family's rejection of me? He shook his head. You're kidding, right? I replied, sounding as hollow an echo. I wish I was. I thought of myself as having been punched in the gut. He was seeing my sister all this time while I was opening my heart to him, and he was reassuring me I deserved more. The sibling who had tormented me so relentlessly? I murmured, the words hanging in my throat. How could you? He reached for my hand, but I drew back. I know it's a lot to take in, he stammered. But it just happened. We started talking after the wedding and, I don't know, we just connected, I said sarcastically. He looked down, shamefaced. While I was drowning in misery, you were connecting with my sister? The sister who helped ruin my life? I know it looks bad, but looks bad? I said, my voice growing. Tears running down my face, I hurried out of his place, saying, It is bad. It's beyond bad. It's unforgivable. It astounds me. The next few days were a flurry of rage, hurt, and uncertainty. My best buddy, Jake, the one guy I thought I could trust, had deceived me too. I hardly could function. I couldn't eat, and I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see Chloe's arrogant smile and Jake's contrite eyes. I addressed Chloe, naturally, since I felt as though I was caught in an endless dream, declaring that she and Jake were truly in love, and that I should be glad for them. She sought to defend herself. Good, I wanted to shout. When the two people I loved most had stabbed me in the back, how could I find pleasure? Obviously, my parents supported Chloe and Jake. I realized then that I was really alone. I was overreacting, they said, and I needed to move on, let them be happy. It was like a twisted echo of what they had said when Chloe got engaged to Ethan. My family had left me. My ex-fiancé was a serial cheater, and my best friend had turned on me in the worst imaginable manner. Though the world seemed to be falling around me, somewhere in the middle of all that suffering and hopelessness, a spark of rebellion started within me. I wasn't going to let them break through. Their treachery was not going to define me. I meant to get above it. I thought I would make it. I first turned off all communication with Chloe and Jake. The entire 9 yards, I blocked their numbers and unfriended them on social media. I wanted not to hear their justifications or excuses. Of course, my folks attempted to help. I needed time to recover, process the betrayal, and sort out what the heck I was going to do with my life. They texted, phoned, even showed up at my flat without warning, but I wouldn't move. It was difficult. I avoided anything involving them until they were ready to admit the suffering they had caused me. Days when I felt so isolated I could hardly breathe. I knew, though, I could not return to the status quo. I put myself into my work, picking up extra shifts wherever I could. I couldn't keep acting as though everything was fine when it most obviously wasn't. It was a wonderful diversion from the upheaval in my personal life. One evening, working late, a customer struck up a discussion with me. Gradually but definitely, I began to feel purposeful once more. Alex was his name. He was a nice, kind soul with a real interest in getting to know me and a lovely grin. That evening, we spoke for hours on everything and nothing. Alex and I started dating, and for the first time since Ethan, I felt a flutter of hope. The first time in a long time I felt really seen and heard. Alex was honest, faithful, and encouraging. Everything Ethan lacked. Having Alex at my side, I began to reconstruct my life. He listened to my stories, hugged me when I sobbed, and never made me feel like I was anything less than fantastic. At last, following the dream my parents had tried to use against me, I leave my dead-end employment and start grad school. Outside the shadow of my family's turmoil, I rediscovered who I was, rebuilt relationships with old friends, and created new ones. I happened to run across Jake in the grocery store one day. Said another way, it was embarrassing. He seemed leaner, guilt casting shadows across his eyes. Though he was sorry for what he had done, I could sense he did not expect me to pardon him. And I didn't quote my voice firm. I wish you well, Jake. But we're done now, Dot. He nodded, his shoulders caving in. I had closure as I turned away. At last, I had let go of the resentment and hurt keeping me hostage for so long. I had freedom. Chloe and Ethan's marriage was on the rocks, last I knew. built on a basis of lies and dishonesty, their relationship was disintegrating under the weight of their own poor decisions. I didn't feel bad for them either. I just didn't gloat. After making their bed, they had to lie in it. For my part, I felt more joyful than I had ever been. I had a lovely boyfriend, a successful career, and a fresh appreciation of self-worth. Family, I had discovered, is about the people who pick you, who stick by you, who love you unreservedly, rather than about blood. And I had discovered that occasionally the biggest betrayals may bring the most unanticipated gifts. As I have discovered, life is a trip rather than a destination. This is a meandering road with many surprising curves. Occasionally, the most implausible locations have the most breathtaking views. A few years went by. After graduating from grad school with honors, I found my ideal work and started a loving, laughing, and fulfilling life with Alex. We purchased a small, comfortable house, got Luna, a rescue dog, and even began discussing our own future family. I got a letter in the mail one cool autumn afternoon. It came from Chloe. Opening it, my heart hammered. A mix of curiosity and fear whirled around me. Her comments carried a lot of guilt and regret. She said she was sorry for the years of anguish and alienation, for the treachery, for the agony she had given me. She wrote about how her marriage to Ethan had collapsed, and about seeing him at last for the manipulative liar he was. She wrote about losing everything: her spouse, her family, her friends. Above all, though she penned about her discovery of herself, she was gradually reconstructing her life, bit by delicate piece, having gone to treatment and begun volunteering at a nearby shelter. She claimed she was not seeking pardon, but she hoped we might be sisters once more someday. Tears filling my eyes, I repeatedly went over the letter. Still raw and sensitive, the scars of the past lingered in me, and I clung on to the wrath and hatred. Still another side of me, a softer, more forgiving side, sensed sympathy for my sister. I did not reply straight away. I needed time to process, to think, to hear my heart whisper. Naturally, I spoke with Alex, and he, as usual, gave his unflinching support. "It's your decision," he advised, "but keep in mind that forgiveness is quite potent. It can repair the future, but it does not pardon the past." After some weeks of reflection, I decided to get in touch with Chloe. We got together for coffee at a small, quiet cafe, the air heavy with unspoken words and years of unmet feelings. First, it was awkward. The conversation stopped and hesitated. But the barriers between us began to fall gradually as we spoke. We didn't pretend the past hadn't happened. We admitted the suffering, the treachery, the wounds that would always show. We did, however, also value our relationship, our shared past, and the indisputable fact that we were sisters. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation. It was dirty and difficult, and rebuilding the confidence that had been destroyed would take time. Still, that was a beginning. We gently began to reconnect over the next few months. Lunch, walks, and even a few unpleasant family dinners with our parents, who, to their credit, had also engaged in some soul-searching and were trying to be better, were events. It wasn't simple. Setbacks, misinterpretation, and times when I wanted to give up all existed. But something kept dragging me back. A deep-rooted sense of love and loyalty that would not be extinguished. Chloe called me one day with great enthusiasm. She declared, "I have some news. I'm pregnant." My heart burst with delight. "Chloe, that is quite remarkable. Hello?" She laughed, a real joyous laugh I hadn't heard in years. "I'm afraid, but I also find great excitement. I am going to be a mother." I grinned, tears twitching in my eyes. "You're going to be a fantastic mum." I stood in the hospital room a few months later, clutching my newborn niece in my arms. Looking at her small face, so pure and full of promise, I felt a surge of love sweep over me. Love that stretched not just to this new life, but also to my sister, to my family, to the messy, complex, wonderful tapestry of our life. Though we would never forget the past, it ceased to define us. We had discovered a means of healing, atonement, forgiveness, and forward movement. And in the process, we had learned that although they never really break, The links of sisterhood can bend and sway in the greatest winds, much as the branches of a willow tree could do. Though the road was still long, we were strolling it hand in hand into a future full of hope, healing, and the ongoing power of love.